Guys, what's up?
What's up?
We are here. So we are going to be talking a little bit about the Inductive Bible study. So if you guys have this little guy right here, Sean's got his, Jacob's got his. Sean is our featured guest. He's our student. Yeah, we're going to ask a couple more of y'all to join us. So be doing that. Be doing your Inductive. So every single week, we're doing a teaching, Undivided Devotion. We really want you guys to be doing the quiet time like we talked about, but we also want you guys to be doing the Inductive Bible study. Because you guys should be self-feeders. We want to be able to learn how to read the Bible for ourselves. You should never rely on me. You should never rely on Jacob. Sean's going to really learn how to do it. When he starts teaching, you should never rely on him. So we all should be able to read the Bible for ourselves. So we're going to build up these habits, learn how to read the Bible, and it's going to be really good stuff. Yeah. So with that being said, your leader is going to really work with you on doing an inductive Bible study. We're only going to look at 3 verses this week, and next week it'll be very similar, but just a couple verses, and we're going to dive into it. So enough chatter. Let's get straight into this. Y'all, you ready?
Let's go for it.
All right, cool. So the very first deal with the inductive Bible study is, what's the first one, Jacob? Do you know what we're looking for when we're looking at a passage, when we're trying to inject whatever?
We want to observe the text, know what's happening. What does the text say?
Okay. So we want to observe the text. So figure out what the text is saying, looking at it. So that's what we're going to do. I think the best way to do this is when you're looking at a passage and you want to figure out what does it say, you want to read more than one translation. Okay, so I have the ESV. I have it lined up right here on my sheet, my cheat sheet. I have the ESV, and then I have the NLT, the New Living Translation. Those are the ones I would recommend for you guys to read. If you're going to read any other ones, just let me know, and I'll help you out with what type of translation it is, because there's really almost a skill to reading certain translations. But this will really help you if you read the ESV version and then the NLT. You'll see the NLT will kind of speak it a little more in our language. And the ESV will kind of be a little more literal, kind of looking for the exact words that was written in that time, the Greek or the Hebrew. So let's go ahead and read it. Sean, you want to read 1 Corinthians 7:32 through 35.
Sure. I want you to be free from anxieties. An unmarried man is anxious about about the things of the Lord, how to please the Lord. But the married man is anxious about worldly things, how to please his wife, and his interests are divided. And the unmarried or betrothed,
there you go.
Sorry,
you good.
woman is anxious about the things of the Lord and how to be holy in the body and the spirit. But the married woman is anxious about the worldly things, how to please her husband, and this for our own benefit, and not to lay any resistance upon you, but to promote good order, to secure your undivided devotion to the Lord.
Boom, there you go. Good job. So we read that in the ESV, and then again, for the sake of time, we would then go read it in the NLT, which again, it will make a little more sense to our ears now. But when we are looking at a passage and we're reading that, what are we looking for? If we're looking at 3 verses, what are some things, some tools that we can use? And you'll see it in your booklet. What are some tools, Sean, that you can use to help you understand the meaning of the passage?
You can look at some keywords.
Yeah, you can look at the keywords. Jacob, how do you go about looking at keywords in your own personal study? How do you do that?
I like to go through, reread the passage, and mark up any words that, if you took that word out, would that passage make any sense? That's a keyword.
That's good. So things that jump out, things maybe keywords that repeat themselves. Like if you're looking at 3 verses and you see anxious a couple times, like, yo, that's definitely a key word. Or like Jacob said, if you take it out, it doesn't make sense without it. So a key word is still going to be up to you. It might be a word that you have no idea what it means, like undivided. What does that mean? Or anxious. What does that mean? That's a key word. So what I like to do is I like to underline it. I wish you could see my cheat sheet, but I have them all underlined to show myself these are some key words. And I'm going to go back and then I'm going to define what these key words are. So let's look real quick. Actually, even before that, ESV. So let's see, Jacob, you can kind of see my cheat sheet. What did I do? I used the ESV and then I used the NLT. What did I do to kind of help me understand what these words mean? See, can you see it? He has no.
So you could compare any kind of what the word would be the same as in each translation. So similar words like, for example, free. You have the same one is in both translations. So you have free in the ESV and you have free in the NLT. But the next key word in the ESV is anxieties. When you look in the New Living Translation, you don't have that word there. It says concerns of this life. So you can compare those key words there and even get more of a meaning behind what the author is saying here.
Right. That's perfect. That's exactly what happened. So again, ESV, NLT. Take both of those translations, look at your keywords in the ESV, and then you can kind of see, oh, wait, this NLT uses a different word or a different phrase, and it can actually help me to understand what this keyword means. That's the best way for me to explain what a keyword is. So let's go through this, and we're just going to list the keywords. I wrote some keywords, but I want to see if you guys happen to have some keywords as well. I'm going to give you a highlighter. You can have that highlighter. And if you see any other keywords, maybe we can jump at it and just kind of attack them. But I'm gonna read this again, and we're gonna stop at each verse. We're only reading 4 verses here, so we're gonna stop at each verse, look at the keywords, and then we're gonna kind of move on. So first verse here, it says, I want you to be free from anxieties. The unmarried man is anxious about the things of the Lord, how to please the Lord. So that's our first verse. Let's look at some keywords. What are some keywords, guys?
Free.
Yeah, free. What's another one? We'll list them out. Anxieties. I see anxious twice. It's kind of a similar. No, you're good. It's good. What's another one?
Please the Lord.
To please the Lord. So that's good right there. That's a key word, but that's a key phrase, right? So it's a key word or phrase, multiple words that have a meaning to it. So please the Lord. That's good. So what I did, and we'll have a little writing for you guys to be able to see this, is I went and I underlined them, and then I wrote on a separate sheet of paper in my booklet, I went and wrote these keywords down and put a little dash next to them because I wanted to find what those words are. So let's go ahead and move to verse 33, and we're just going to list out our key words. Verse 33, but the married man is anxious about worldly things, how to please his wife. What are key words? Worldly things, for sure. What else? Please his wife. That's interesting. Right away, we're looking at the meaning of this. I can already see. Can you guys see something interesting about this? These first 2 verses with key words.
There's a lot of repetition.
Right. So that's something. Yeah. Go ahead. You want to say something more?
There's a lot of. There's a lot of emphasis on anxieties, being anxious, but also pleasing either people or pleasing the Lord.
That's good. Verse 34, and his interests are divided, and the unmarried or betrothed woman is anxious about the things of the Lord, how to be holy in the body and in spirit. But the married woman is anxious about worldly things, how to please her husband. Key words.
Holy in body and spirit.
Right. Holy in body and spirit. Do you know what the word holy means, Sean?
No,
so that's good. Exactly. So he's going to underline that because he doesn't know what that word means. That's good. Do you know what the word spirit means? Kind of. That's great. If you kind of know what a word is, figure it out. Underline it because that's definitely a word you want to underline. I'll be honest with you. I kind of knew what those words meant as well.
Yeah. And it's important here to remember we're in just observing the text. So when you don't know a word, just mark it up, and we'll come back to it later. That comes into the next section of interpreting the Bible. But we'll just mark it up for now, and we'll come back to it later.
Good. Verse 35, I say this for your own benefit, not to lay any restraint upon you, but to promote good order and to secure your undivided devotion to the Lord. What are some key words there?
Undivided devotion.
Yeah. Undivided devo. So, again, underline those, write them down, and then we're going to define those. Now, I don't want you to go to a dictionary. I don't want you to do anything like that. I just want you to use what you know to begin to define them. There's one asset. So we looked at the ESV. What is the one thing, Sean, if you know this, what is the one thing that you have here that can help you define these key words without going anywhere else? Is there anything on this sheet of paper or in these Bibles that we have? Jacob, why don't you help him out?
So we have the other translation.
Yeah, we have the other translation. So right here, boom. I like this because we didn't I didn't set you up for this. I'm just rolling. So you have this other translation. The other translation can then help you define your words. So free from anxieties. We're not going to go through each. Well, we are going to go through really quickly. Free from anxieties. Means free from the concerns of life. Jacob already showed that the NLT showed us what anxieties means. Being free from anxieties means, and you can keep going. Anxious, spending time doing things that cause stress that's kind of what I put. Pleasing the Lord means to make happy. Bring Him glory, make Him happy. I mean, you can just go through the list. I just kind of write them out because I want to see what is the Spirit speaking. What does this mean? And like Jacob said, we're just going to observe. We're not an interpret yet. We're not interpreting it yet, but we're just observing. Anything else from that section, either of you guys? No. Not, we're just going to move on. Cool. All right, so let's move on then. After observation, what is the next? Who knows this? What is the next thing? What is the next thing we want to do if we're doing an inductive Bible study?
We want to interpret what that text means. So we want to actually do word studies on the keywords. We'll come back to that list that we made, and we'll read the scripture with the new illumination of what do these words mean, and it gives the text a whole lot of new meaning than we might have seen before.
That's good, right? So we want to dive even a little deeper. So we have all these key words. We want to figure out what do these texts mean. There's one real big one here, so I'm gonna go back to Sean, see if he knows this, and he doesn't have it open. Maybe I can kind of sneak him a little cheat here. There's one big thing you have to know about a passage before you can really interpret and figure out what exactly it's saying. There's one real big thing to figure that out. Sean, do you happen to know what it is?
Context.
Yeah. Context. What is the context? Context says in your booklet, context is what? King. It's king. Context is king. It's everything. So, Jacob, do you know what the context is? Like, not of this passage specifically, but what does context mean in general?
Context is the background information or actually the underlying information that we have that builds up to the information we are reading about now. So, for example, it's all of the things that have happened before what we are reading about now. To give us information and help us to understand where we are at now in the text.
That's good. So, yeah, that's your context, your background information, figuring out when was it written, who wrote the book, because that's going to help us to know what's actually happening in the passage. Are there any general topics that are being said? Like, just figuring out all this background horizon type information to help us to begin to understand exactly what's going on in our passage. So that may seem very intimidating, and it kind of is, but there's some good tools out there that can help us to understand this. So we have this cartoon-like thing. If you maybe could show the camera over here as Elliot's coming. By the way, shout out to Elliot, taking some videos for us. So that's our Bible project. I don't know if you've heard of the Bible project, but the Bible project goes through each book of the Bible and it will lay out a context of that whole book. It'll tell us who wrote it. It'll tell us why he wrote it. It'll tell us the time frame. It'll tell us the people that he wrote it to, the situation, the issues. It'll tell us all those things, which will begin to help us to understand what is happening in the passage. We must know context. Context has a crown because context is king. So all I did is I just went and watched the Bible Project. It's like a 6 to 9 minute video that you just watch, and it's kind of cool. Like Sean just showed you, it's like this little cartoon that he draws out what's happening throughout this whole book. It's really neat. So as I watched this, I wrote down a couple notes. After planting the church in Corinth, Paul was given bad reports about the happenings at Corinth. This gave Paul reason to write this book. So that's important to know. Like, why did Paul write the book? Is it just a random book that he's writing? Or is there something going on? Paul planted this church, leaves, and he's starting to plant other churches. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he's getting bad reports. Like, this stuff is happening. This stuff is happening in the church. And it breaks Paul's heart. And he begins to write a letter to the church to fix some of these issues. So that's going to help us to know, like, how are we going to live this passage out? We need to know that to be able to interpret that. What's another point that I wrote down, Sean?
Paul addresses 5 issues and shows how the gospel is the answer to each issue.
Boom, that's really good. So, like, that's good on interpretation. You know, in order to know, like, if Paul addresses in this whole book of Corinthians, he's addressing 5 different issues, we need to know what? What do we need to know with that, Jacob?
The background.
The
context.
background. You don't know. The context,
context.
yeah. We need to know which issues he's addressing in this specific passage. We're in chapter 7. So, like, what issue is it? You can even kind of see here, he's talking about divisions in the church. He's talking about sexual problems. He's talking about food problems. He's talking about gatherings. He's talking about the resurrection. All these different problems that they were having, Paul is addressing one specific problem in chapter 7. Who knows what that is?
Domestic relationship.
A domestic relationship. So Paul is talking about an issue that they were having in the church based upon the overarching issue sex, but domestic relationships. He has this real deep conversation here. And so he talks about that, and we're going to be able to... Can you guys see how that helps you to understand like what's really happening in the passage? First off, Paul wrote it. He's seeing some issues. He's fixing it with the gospel. You guys got anything to say about that?
No, I think it's just really interesting how Paul is just written this letter, to the Church of Corinth, and we can take this and start to study it, but then also to apply it to our own lives. So I think it's really awesome that we can have this background information about stuff that has never really even happened close to our time frame, but yet we can take words out of that and apply it to our lives.
That's good. And you might be saying, okay, but why do I really need to know this? It's kind of stupid. Why do I need to know Paul was writing here? Can't I just read it and You can't. Why? Because it's God's inspired word, and so we need to know exactly what is happening in the passage. We need to know the meaning. You can't really know the meaning if you do not know every single thing. Sorry, our cameraman broke, so my concentration went. This is a free video. I'm allowed to trip a little bit. But you can't really know the meaning if you don't know who wrote it, why he wrote it. If we don't know why, then we can just kind of what they call eisegeting it. In other words, just kind of putting our own opinion on the text. Paul says be single. He said that he was jealous. Paul was single himself, and he was kind of mad at people. And but that's not why he did it at all. He was talking about a certain issue. So it's very important to know the context so we can get the meaning from the passage. And we'll talk more about this as we do these lessons from week to week. A couple other things here for interpreting. What's some resources here? I already mentioned the Bible Project and give you some context. Here's another one is the freebiblecommentary.org. That will give you a lot of the context of the passage, of even the whole book, and you'll begin to understand a little more. But there's another really big one here, Sean. What's another big tool that we use for interpretation? The first one was context is king. The second one is...
Cross-referencing.
Yeah, cross-referencing. Yeah. Jacob, what does cross-referencing mean?
It means taking the text that you are on currently and then looking at other texts to help illuminate the one that you're looking at.
Yeah, that's good. So remember, there's plenty of different authors in the whole Bible, but God is the one author. So if he said it one place, there's a chance that it's going to be said somewhere else, and that can help us to begin to understand what's happening even more. So yeah, it's best to cross-reference some passages, and it'll really help you out. So there was a passage in this, as I was kind of reading those 4 verses, that I saw. Jacob, can you read the passage that was cross-referenced? And even before you read that, your study Bible will have cross-references. If you're asking, how do I figure out a cross-reference? A study Bible can do that. The freebiblecommentary.org. Another one is biblehub.org. There's Blue Letter. What is it? Blue Letter Bible.com or something like that. We'll
.com to everything.
Yeah. .com or .org. Whatever. You'll figure it out. So those are, if you look up the passage, you'll be able to see cross references to those passages. It'll give you other passages that say this kind of similar concepts. But what's the passage, Jacob?
So this comes out of Matthew 6:25. It says, "Therefore I tell you, do not be anxious." There's the word anxious again. Yeah. "Do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, nor about your body, what you will put on. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing?"
It's good. So again, who says that? Do we know who says that? That saying right there. It's Matthew 6, chapter 20, verse 25.
Jesus.
Jesus says that. So it's kind of cool. Paul's writing the same thing. He's saying, I don't want you to be anxious. And Jesus says over here, don't be anxious. It's a command not to be anxious. So if Jesus is commanding us not to be anxious, it's probably a good idea to look at what Paul is saying and take it pretty serious. It's like Paul saying, I don't want you to be anxious. Oh, shoot. I should probably pay attention to that because Jesus is saying, don't be anxious. So it's just kind of cool. You can kind of see different people saying similar things, and it can help us to begin to understand the passage a little more. So there's cross-referencing, and then what's the third tool that we want to begin to use in our inductive or when we're interpreting the Bible?
The word study.
Yeah.
So that's when we are actually defining out those words that we made a list of before, the keywords. And we study out those words. What do those mean? Maybe taking it back to the Greek or the original language, and seeing what is the author trying to say through this word. What this may seem like or have a different definition than what we come to the table with. And so what does it actually mean?
Again, very, very great, Jacob. It's diving deeper into those keywords. If there's one, like for me, every single teaching or whatever, I like to do at least one word study. Like undivided and devotion were the two words that I picked. I wanted to go deeper. What does it mean? There are what they call lexicons or different dictionaries that will help you to understand, because remember, the Bible wasn't written in English. What was it written in? What was that language? Greek. It was written in Greek or Hebrew or Aramaic in the Old Testament, but Greek is our specific language that we're looking at here. So we need to go back and say, what did this Greek word mean? It'll give us deeper understanding to the word, therefore the passage. And you may say, well, I'm not a Greek scholar. I don't go to seminary. How would I ever figure that out? Pretty easy. There's a lot of free things that will actually help you to do that. FreeBibleCommentary.org. If you go there, you look up the passage. The guy that wrote that, there's plenty of word studies. Probably going to be the word studies that you want to have. BibleHub.org. Blue Letter, whatever it is, .com or org, whatever. And then just your leaders. Like, we're going to sit down every week. So if you feel super lost, that's okay. Your leaders are going to sit down and help you out with this. Again, they will help you to do those word studies. It gets really, really fun and like engaging when you're diving into a specific word yourself. It's like really incredible. So I did these word studies, and there's just one thing that jumped out to me. The words, they kind of mean... Sean, forgot your name. Kind of forgot your name. Sorry, man. Sean, what is the first word in the Greek? So I put the Greek definitions down. What does that first word mean?
Undivided.
Undivided. Yeah. What does undivided mean?
Oh, without distraction, care, or solitude.
Yeah. So without distraction, care, or solitude. Remember that's actually pretty simple. There are some words that will have massive definitions. Then you kind of have to look at what does it mean in this specific passage. But Jacob, can you see something? Actually, Sean, give us our second definition. And then Jacob, I want to see if you can see a uniqueness about these two words.
Constantly attending.
Constantly attending.
Divided to.
There you go. So devoted is constantly attending, kind of constantly doing something, giving everything into that something. That can help us to understand that word a little more. So Jacob, again, we didn't talk about this. Can you see something that's different about these Greek words? That's kind of unique.
So there's a constant attending to. So the second word is devotion. Yeah. So
right.
There's without distraction and constant attending, and that's the connection. But there is there's a singleness about the undivided. There's a oneness about it. It says without care or solitude. So there's a singleness going forward. This is one thing.
Yeah, you're right. So it does jump out and it says solitude, which is kind of interesting. I don't know. What do you think of when you think of solitude? I don't know. That was a random question. I don't know. I don't think of anything either. I don't know. I just threw it out there. No, I kind of think of jail, honestly. You're like kind of in a cell, but that's kind of weird. So yeah, there's a singleness. There's an undividedness. So the one thing that I kind of saw with both of these words, it's kind of hard to see, but these Greek words are written here this is the only time in the New Testament they're written. So Paul uses this word. It's not written anywhere else in the New Testament. That's why it's kind of the definition's kind of short. So that's kind of interesting. I don't really know what that means other than it's just like that's a very interesting concept. Cool. So there's a lot of little cool things like that when you dive deeper that you might see. It's like, wow, why did Paul, and we just don't have time to dig into why he did that, but why did Paul do that? I don't know. So the very, very last thing. So we've kind of gone through observing the passage. Now we've kind of interpreted. Remember, this can take you a lot longer in your own time, but we're blowing through it. And then the very, very last thing here in this passage is what? When we go to looking at and doing an inductive Bible study, what's the very, very last thing?
How does this apply to your life?
There you go. There you go.
Our lives.
There you go. So application. How does it apply to your life? So I wrote a couple points. You don't have to really look at my points. You can let's just give a couple things. When you're done studying it and getting into it, you want to ask, like, how do I take this and how do I move forward? How do I do something? Because if you're never moving forward with the passage, just forget it. You're just playing games with the Bible. But you want to study it deeply so that God can speak into your life so you can begin to do something with it. So I'm just going to open this up. We'll take a couple minutes. You can read the bullet points that I have, or what is this passage speaking to you?
Something that I got from this was the idea that we need to let our thoughts be consumed by God. So crafting our thoughts to be entirely about God and about godly things, so things that are higher than us, instead of letting it be our mind and our thoughts be consumed with, how do I maintain this relationship? How do I get into a relationship? So a mind on a relationship with God versus a mind on relationships with people or with a person.
That's really good. I like that because that comes, even just the first part of that passage, are you pleasing God or pleasing people? And it's interesting, Paul, if you're interpreting it right, remember we have to go through all that, Paul's not saying pleasing your wife is a bad thing. It's actually a very good thing. But our focus needs to be first on God, then the wife, or then the husband, or then your neighbor, your people. So that's just super important. You might read that passage. If you don't do the observation and interpretation, you might just be like, dang, Paul just said pleasing your wife is bad. Like, oh my gosh. That's not what he's saying. So you have to see the whole picture. But that's very, very, very good. Sean, you got anything for us?
I want to add on to that because actually, if you believe more in God and you put your thoughts into God, it'll be more beneficial to you than just having a bad day. You're just like, I don't want to please nobody. But if you please God and then His please from Him comes to you, then you can please whoever you want.
Right.
Really so that's a result. So you are pleasing God and you are devoted to God, and through that,
you
because
get more benefits.
Yes, exactly.
Benefits.
Exactly.
That's good. It says, in cross-referencing, it says in Acts that it is better to, it's more blessed. In other words, it's better for you, more benefits. It's blessed. It's better to give than to receive. You're more blessed if you're giving than receiving. Why? Because, again, if I'm giving, then I'm getting from God, and the more I do that, the more I'm receiving. So cool. Appreciate you guys doing this. Be doing your inductive Bible studies. Super, super important. We will, next week, we'll hop on. We'll have another student. Sean may even come back with us. Maybe another leader or two, and we'll just kind of continue, and you'll hear different perspectives of how to go about doing this.
Yeah. And talk to your leaders if you have any questions.
Right.
Don't leave it up just to this video, but be in conversation.
Awesome. Boom.